But when they hear this song, they'll learn there's more to token. 25,000 different things we can make from it, and if we give it a chance, we'll save the blinking planet. Food, fuel and medicine, necessities for life, a benefit to all of us, our wonder and delight. Within this smelly weed, there's more than meets the eye, so much, much more than smoking, it can cleanse our dirty skies. Cannabis, cannabis will save the planet with cannabis. Cannabis, cannabis is a very useful weed. Cannabis, cannabis will save the planet with cannabis. Cannabis, cannabis is very good indeed.
Good evening, it's Hemp Works on the time for Hemp Global International Fabulous radio station, which is part of the iHeart group. So, hiya, Brandon. How you doing? Right, where are you, Brandon? What part of the world are you in?
We're in Indiana today, Kokomo actually. It's about an hour from where Purdue University is. They're hour from Indianapolis as well, which I believe Casper was from this area, town, region of the world at some point.
So, what do you get up to down there, Brandon? What brought you to that neck of the woods? Why are you there? What do you do?
Well, I moved back. I traveled the world. I've been over 40 countries. I used to live in Europe, northern Italy for quite a while, and various other places. And I moved back in 2008, something around there, because that's when the recession hit. I wanted to help my family, kind of through the recession, and maybe be the good son here a little bit, and plus bring some knowledge of sustainability and industrial systems design and ecological thinking to the Midwest and to this area where it was sorely lacking, and still kind of is. But we've got a lot accomplished in that amount of time. We have several good projects underway and lots of education around the area. So we're seeing more implementation now than we ever have, which is getting quite exciting.
Can I bring you back to that? You've travelled a lot. You've been in Europe a lot. You've mentioned that you've been in the country where I am coming from at the moment, Transylvania, Romania, northern Italy. So, what do you actually do? What is it that you do? Yeah.
We have a company. What brought me to all those around the world was kind of an organization called ZERI, Zero Emissions Research and Initiatives. And the global not-for-profit and think tank leading, sustainable, projects from integrated biosystems perspective. Looking at things like bacteria, algae, plants, animals, and fungus, and how they interact to create sustainability through ecosystems, and trying to apply that to industrial processes. And so I've traveled the world learning from different projects and different people that were doing what I thought were amazing things, and people that I thought were somewhat my heroes, whether intellectually or scientifically, or through things that I'd heard. So I was lucky enough to do that. So I brought a lot of that knowledge with me, and my goal was to bring it back to the United States and to the Midwest, because I didn't see a lot of that implementation going on.
Yeah.
And today, that's what we do.
Sorry. Yeah, for the less sort of not uneducated, but for the less unaware of us out there, they were big words that you used, but can you sort of strip that down a bit and tell us practically what some of that work is and how it benefits the environment?
Yes, very on a practical example, easy to look at would be coffee waste. That's something that was very big when I was learning, was because coffee is the second largest traded commodity on the planet, behind, cement and water and these things, So, it's utilized in most countries around the world, so there's a lot of waste. And what could you do with that biomass? Because the majority of the biomass, over 99.8% of the coffee biomass was pretty much wasted when you look at the coffee itself. When you go to Starbucks and we pour hot water over it, and you only use about 0.2% of that biomass. So we're looking at what can you do with the rest of it. So the Zeri organization and a man named Gunther Pauly and a lot of his colleagues had looked at ways to do various projects with coffee. One of the more exciting ones was turning that waste into mushrooms. And so they created several jobs, or maybe even several hundred jobs around growing of mushrooms off of coffee waste in probably 20, 30 countries around the world, especially in Colombia, where a lot of the coffee waste was. And so we went to visit places like that. So very practical understanding of how to take a waste material and turn that into a value-added stream in jobs at the same time as dealing with environmental waste.
Wow, because obviously, as a layman, you go into a coffee shop, wherever you go in the world, you buy a cup of coffee, you just see that cup of coffee. But as you say, there's an awful lot of coffee. I mean, some of these big companies must literally go through hundreds of tons of it.
Oh, a huge amount.
And you've turned that product or that waste material into a viable product, which is an environmentally sustainable product. So really, it's like recycling, isn't it? In layman's terms, you're recycling something. You're taking something that we haven't got a use for because we had the coffee, and maybe before it just went in the bin and into the general rubbish, and then you found a way of using it as. I know there was one farm I heard about that was using it like as a fertilizer.
Yeah, it's beyond recycling, and that's what really excited me when I really gravitated toward this approach. It's way beyond recycling, I mean, it's really looking at the whole systems and how to add value, create jobs, and as they would call upsizing instead of downsizing. We think that if we utilize 100% of the resources on the planet properly, we would easily be able to develop all the calories, all the energy, clean water, clean air, and everything that we need to do for humanity. It's a design problem at this point more than it is, say, a scientific or physical reality problem.
Yeah. I heard recently, I believe it was Sweden, that they sort of designed a whole power system to run off recycling. One of the parts of the equation was recycling the rubbish to turn it into usable fuel. And they've been so good at it that they're actually having to import rubbish now because they haven't got enough of their own rubbish to support this network of power, which I just thought was so funny. Not funny in the sense of but really, wow, what a position to arrive at, that they've actually run out of the stock material, which is rubbish. And I think they're importing quite a lot of rubbish from the UK because we don't know how to get rid of it. And there's Sweden just across the water from us. Like, sell us your rubbish. We take it off your hands because we know what to do with it. And,
all right. Well, at least they're thinking in the right direction.
Yeah. So you mentioned about mushrooms as well. I mean, how does mushrooms and coffee go together?
Well, what we're looking at, is, if you look at the fungal kingdom, it is one of the best in nature for deconstructing, and digesting the elements, So look at hemp, and that's kind of what our conversation will go towards. We're running research, taking the hemp, plant and running that through, sterilization processes known as an autoclave. And then, we bag that up and we're creating substrate out of that to grow mushrooms. And so we're finding that certain species of mushrooms absolutely love the hemp, the stalks and the herd and the fibers and things like that, very much so. And so that's something that we're quite excited about, because now we can take a waste product from either, let's say, the hemp industry or the medical ganja industry, and turn that into value-added products and jobs in a fairly quick order. And we know we're going through a bit of a protein-starved world now, especially as the population is increasing. So turning these things into things like mushrooms that are going to have very healthy benefits for humanity makes a lot more sense than just trying to convert them into other things.
So technically speaking, just watch this one. I came from a farm, 650 hectare, not a couple of weeks back. Right? They were growing basically that 650 hectare for hemp seed, which is one of the highest forms of protein on the planet. Again, a lot of the herd, it basically just goes back to the ground. They got no use for it. So you could take that waste and then grow mushrooms on it, which is, again, very high protein. Is that correct?
Correct. And then you could easily create a product, maybe mix the hemp seeds and the mushrooms and make a high value added, mushroom hemp bar or something, product, or shampoo or whatever. And now you're having some of the healthiest products on the planet, because I have a shampoo made with mushrooms. I use a toothpaste made with algae, and so you can start to integrate these bio-based products into our everyday products, and that's really what we want to get to. And hemp and mushrooms and algae, I believe, will be the three leading, inputs into the future economy.
I love that because many years ago I met people that talked about the mycelium and how all the mushrooms all connect and how it's basically sort of like a neural network of the planet. And I became very interested in mushrooms. Unfortunately, all my headspace is used up with hemp, but I do have this love of mushrooms, and using it the way that you just said just really brings such a big smile to my face. But from one piece of land, we're going to take two of the highest forms of protein that we know about, that are both ecologically sustainable, and, as you say, give so much benefit back. What a beautiful marriage. That's perfect,
now think about this even further a little more. After you grow the mushrooms on the plant, you now have a great soil amendment that you can mix back and put right back onto the soil to grow the hemp.
Yeah. I believe as well this root system, I don't know if you sort of the mycelium, if you go along with that bit and how they all network and how they talk to each other. But again, the root system of the hemp plant, especially the real agricultural outdoor one, not so much this medical indoor one, but the root system is absolutely massive. And I know from my experience of growing hemp that really a field of good quality hemp, really all the root system links up as one. So then if you've got the mushrooms in there as well doing this mycelium thing, it's like quite a beautiful symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
So I take it that's been quite successful. Yeah. I take it that this has been quite successful with the mushrooms. And
the trial tests have been very successful. We now need to, once we have enough biomass now in the United States where we're located, probably be next year before we can kind of commercialize anything. But we're in the beginnings of collecting, all the knowledge around it, how it works, and that kind of stuff. And then hopefully next, we might be able to launch something in the spring, for having enough of the biomass to make it economically viable as well. Because currently, as I can use it, but if today hemp is still a precious and rare, commodity, and then once we scale that up further, these type of projects will become much more economically viable.
Well, I certainly save you some of our biomass for next year. You can have as many tons as you want of it here.
All right.
Because again,
start studying the mushroom industry in Romania.
Bring it on. Bring on the mushrooms. Yeah. Because again, it's such a shame. One of the things that I'm doing here is certainly next year to try and open up the market a bit more, to show them that there is other uses of the plant rather than just taking seed from it. Because that is, from what I've seen of it so far, 90% of the grow over here, and it's massive grows. It's just used for seed industry. Yeah. And the rest of it is just getting trashed. And as you know, it all can have a good quality added value. And not just the added value, it's so useful. The fibres are so good for industry. They're so economically sustainable. Again, going back to what you're saying, the biomass of it, building materials. I really want to show them how to build from it. Yeah? It's not a shame to see all this stuff just laying on these farms floors going to waste. But it's sort of like, I get excited because I know that I can show them how to use it, which then opens up their economy a bit more. And believe you me, the hemp farmers in this part of the world don't really make any money at all. It's the substance farming, which is a shame because we all know we can add good value to it. So fantastic. So what else do you do? This is the mushroom bit and the hemp bit. I mean, that's just intriguing. Algae as well. That's a pretty amazing substance. Well, not a substance, but how it eats things.
Yeah, we're working, with the algae. That's something fairly, we've been studying algae and working with different people who focus on the microalgae, which are things like cleaning wastewater treatment plants and making, biofuels and things like that. But lately what we've really started to get excited about are macroalgae, which are things like sea vegetables,
Wow.
where we could, so these are large scale, large growth algae, kelps, sea lettuce, dulse, and these type of species that aren't as common maybe in the food supply right now, but when you start to look at some future trends and where the healthiest foods are going to come from, and also thinking of some of the waters may be nuclear radioactive waste maybe left over in Asia from some of the the problems over there, Fukushima and all that, but we found that we're working with different scientists and experts and seaweed, people who really understand the life cycle of seaweed and how to farm that. And they've developed some unique, sustainable, what they call sustainable tumble culture processes to grow these macroalgae. And so we're working with them to develop processes as well to hopefully we'll bring this to Santa Cruz, California, where we're looking at now under a project there. And so we will start to create the seed stock for these different macroalgae species, and then we'll start to work with people on how to cultivate them and hopefully develop a small industry around sea vegetables and then really educate the market on those. Same thing had to happen with the mushrooms. Over the last 30 years, a lot of education goes into that to teach people about them, and now they're one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing, specialty food crop in the world. And algae will take hopefully the next curve on that just because of the health benefits and nutritional benefits of them and the ability to grow tremendous amounts of biomass while cleaning water and sequestering carbon dioxide at the same time.
And combine that with hemp, and you've got a really amazing scenario.
Right.
Because again, I've looked at Fukushima and hemp. Why they're not growing it down there as a bioremedial crop to soak up some of this radiation that's leaking. And of course, again, I feel that they should at least look at the hempcrete for sealing this thing with. Because if they grew it, that would clean the land, and then they could use that, what they're going to do with it. Well, make it into hempcrete and pour it over the bloody thing. I mean, I know I'm very simplistic in these things, but just because they're simplistic doesn't mean to say with the right science and the right people working behind them that they wouldn't work. But it just doesn't ever seem to be mentioned. It's like such a dirty word. Yet they have this amazing problem down there where they're looking at all sorts of things, and I've not heard very, very little about them actually looking at their ancient hemp crop to help resolve this. And as you say, combine that with the mushrooms and with the seaweed, because I've heard as well that these algae, they can really eat up lots of chemical waste, can't they? If that's correct.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Your carbon.
Yeah.
If you could. You have a couple of greenhouses, and there's a few other pieces of technologies that we work with that you could put on site. That you can generate energy. You can create heat. There's a few things we could do. And mix it together, and you pretty much could develop an off-grid operation that's fully, functional and kind of could be sustainable and treat its own waste and inputs and outputs and things like that, while creating abundance for products that you can export to the market.
Brandon, I'm sure your day's pretty much like the rest of us. We have to get up and answer telephones and send emails and stuff, but it must be very exciting being in your world. You must be seeing some amazing developments coming forward.
Well, yes and no. I mean, sometimes you have to push things through, yourself, because nobody else sees it, and so you're out there, and some people think you're crazy, and they're like, no, how are you ever going to make any money? Thinking about too much stuff or trying to integrate all this stuff. Just focus on one area, And my thing is, my background and my passion is looking at the integrated systems and how they play. And I had very good training at a young age, and so I'm trying to incorporate that into this emerging industry. If hemp and cannabis itself plays very well with other species, and so we're going through the 6th great mass extinction right now. if we're really going to try to solve our problems, it's not going to be with the same thinking, that got us into those problems, which is linear design and traditional business models and utilizing, the traditional, species, the corn and soy and all this that are out there. That's probably not going to get us there. Nothing against those, but utilizing hemp and the values we have that for, the circular economy and understanding how hemp and cannabis can meet the basic needs of humanity much better than any other plant species, and then integrating that into the other kingdoms of nature makes just a whole lot of sense to me if we're really going to take our approach to sustainability on this planet seriously.
Absolutely. Can I take you back to, you just used the phrase sixth generation extinction? Could you tell me what is that? Sixth generation.
Okay, not sixth generation per se. The sixth mass sixth mass extinction. So sixth great mass extinction. So what it basically meaning is more species are being eradicated now faster than any other time in history that's recorded. There's 6 times that this has happened, right? That's recorded in our modern day science. And in this one today is caused by a species internally, meaning us, the human being. We're the one causing the 6th great mass extinction today. So we're causing the eradication of species left and right constantly. So what that means, though, is that the web of life is going to be much more fragile. And as that happens, we become much more fragile. And as it becomes unhealthy, we become unhealthy. And as more species become extinct, the greater chance that humanity will go extinct too. There's nothing saying that we have the right to be on this earth and no other species does. They're what create our sustainability, an interconnected web of life, and we're not separate from that. And so until we learn to come back into that and play our role properly, we're going to have a struggle on this planet.
And really, from my point of view, we don't really need to be struggling if we incorporate some of these things, like you're talking about mushrooms and algae, and certainly hemp and some of the, the solar powers and the wind powers and all these other amazing technologies that we have. I find, even though I'm coming up towards 60 years of age, I'm finding the future so exciting. If some of these things can really be embraced, the future generations, it just seems to be, I know it's that crossroads stuff and all that, but there seems to be 2 futures on the card at the moment. And the future that I see, the sustainability future, is just so amazing. I want to live forever. And yet the other side of the coin, with all the corporations and the oil and all this stuff that's with war, I just sometimes think, oh man, do I really want to be here anymore? Because it's just,
the challenge is big. So the challenge is big. It is vast. The challenge is big. It's vast. I mean, that second, scenario you mentioned is seems so bleak, and it seems so real because it is out there, But the first one can happen as well. I mean, there's nothing to say that if humanity doesn't wake up and entrepreneurship takes over and we don't allow governments and corporations, like you say, to manipulate us and lie to us and try to control, especially different, natural plants that may have huge benefit to all of us, that we have to overcome that through education and entrepreneurship. And then all these technologies we talk about at the end of the day do lead to freedom, when implemented correctly, because you end up paying yourself over time.
Yeah. I look at it like this, Brandon. If an old fool like me can work it out with no finances and no real big infrastructure effort behind me, then surely somebody with a bit more room they can work it out. If I can do it, they can do it, because there's nothing really special about me. Seriously.
Right.
So it really just seems to me it's just so simplistic to be able to take some of these things forward. Once you start getting young, vibrant, educated people with all that and a little bit of money behind it, to sort of make the ball roll. I just find it so achievable, because I know from my own efforts, and this is not bigging myself up, from my own small efforts, I have had some great success. Right. Talking to guys like you and industries that are coming on board, then it must be so easy for them to convert over. It just seems to be more about attitude. And as you say, education, but even education, some people just don't want to use. They don't want to listen.
No, they don't. But and that's there's a thing, with the fusion of innovations, and you learn how to be a change agent in society. When I was younger, you think you had to change everybody, and you have to reach everybody, and you do your best, but you realize, what, you're probably wasting your time. You should work with as my mentors say, follow the yeses, and work with the people who want to work with you, and are moving in that direction. You'll get a lot more accomplished in time than trying to deal with the laggards in society and the people who are slowing you down. And I think we don't have a whole lot of time left, on this planet to not start doing the right thing. This has been on the card. This whole
sustainability has been on the cards for the best part of my lifetime. Now, certainly since when I, in my 20s, you started hearing about environment, eco things, blah 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 blah, and now it really is. Right. We can't keep talking about it for much longer. I agree with you. If the change doesn't come quite quickly, a lot of people are going to get very, very hurt. A lot of the environment is going to get lost for most probably forever. I hate to say that word, but it just seems to be that it can't keep talking about it. Real effort's got to be made.
Time to move on. I mean, the United Nations had a program from, I think, 2005 to 2014 called The Decade Towards Education for Sustainable Development, right? But the 2014 came, that decade's over, it's time for action and implementation. But anyways, let's talk about another thing with climate change that was exciting, because it kind of leads back to where I'm at here, which was the hemp-based car,
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so that was just here recently.
Yeah. When you say the hemp-based car, which one are you talking about?
This is the Renew sports car.
What, the Lotus Elite one?
No, this was I believe the frame, like the engine and the frame would have been Mazda Miata, but the body was hemp composite.
Yeah.
So it would have been internal combustion engine running a hemp composite body, which it makes the car probably 25% hemp, by material there, and then by utilizing an older motor and frame. And so there's a guy named Bruce Dietzen with RenewSportsCars.com. That's plural.
Oh, I think I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, it's really good looking car,
Did you see the one that Lotus brought out about 3 or 4 years ago? The Eco
Yes,
Lotus.
I did.
That was very interesting. I actually got to work with one of the guys that was involved in that many years ago on my first hemp farm back in 2000. A guy called Dave somebody anyway, but he was one of the fiber bioremedial experts from Lotus, and he came down to our hemp farm in 2000 and spent quite a few weeks with us looking at how the fiber operated. And he also brought down a guy that was into bamboo and what this guy could do with bamboo fiber was absolutely incredible. And it was quite interesting to see a few years back when Lotus brought that car out, how well it was developed and how much hemp they'd actually managed to get into it now. I've actually seen it. It's a beautiful looking car. And I know that
it's good looking design.
Yeah, we have a program over in the UK. I don't know whether you get it over there. It's called Top Gear. The guy that used to run the show, he's completely anti-eco. Right? They sacked him now. A guy called Jeremy Clarkson. He's quite funny. He was a good TV presenter, but he actually drove this thing. They made him drive it because he was so anti-eco, and he got out of it. And this guy gets to drive some of the best cars in the world, and he literally got out of it. He said, "Oh my God, I don't believe it. I'm going to have to say it. It's one of the best cars I've ever driven." So it was nice to see somebody that was so staunch against things. So and it did, when you saw its performance, it was quite phenomenal. How because of its lightweight, because of its stability, because of its strength. And that really was only the prototype. I'm sure when Lotus actually do release that car onto the open market, that
will be the hope one day, right?
Yeah. And I believe they're going to put a Tesla engine into it. They was looking at an electric Tesla engine to fit into it. Watch this space. I was talking to that guy as well, the guy that was going to build the aeroplane, this Tesla guy. That looked quite interesting too, hemp planes. Yeah, but it's got so many uses, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the engine, the Tesla engine. This kind of goes back to why we had the car here. And we had the car here, and they drove it up to Farm Aid, and they show it off there for a little documentary. But the reason why the car came to Kokomo were a couple of reasons. One, where I'm at in Kokomo, Indiana, they had one of the first internal combustion engines in the United States was developed here, so they kind of have some history. But we supplied the car with a fuel called biobutanol. And biobutanol is a pretty close to a drop-in fuel for gasoline, so you don't have to do a whole lot of modification to your engines, and has about the same octane as a low-rating gas, depending on which type of butanol we have. So we supplied the car with 55 gallons of biobutanol, so that way they could take it on a bit of a tour around some of the hemp projects and hemp fields and the hemp outreach that they were doing here in the Midwest and into Colorado for the show. So you'll have a car that was that's hemp body car that's going to be run on biobutanol. So the carbon emissions of the car will be a lot less than a Tesla motor or anything like that, or an electric motor or hybrid, or even a biodiesel or something along those lines, because biobutanol has a much better an ecological footprint than any other fuel that you could do into an internal combustion engine. So things like cellulosic ethanol, things like that are going to be a little harder of a sell, and you'll have to do stronger blends than you would if we were to move our economy towards biobutanol.
Yeah, wow, that sounds fantastic. And obviously, it's a good performing fuel, the one that you just mentioned.
Yes. No, it has the same octane as traditional gasoline, so I think it's around 86, 87. And then if you have a there's a isobutanol, which I think you can get up to like 101 or something like that, 102 maybe.
Jesus, that's racing car fuel.
Yeah, it's racing car fuel pretty much.
That's racing car fuel. And then once you start going to those octane blends, that is the real, drag car racing. Yeah. Even I wouldn't go as far as to say Formula One, but certainly some of the lower Formula 3, possibly IndyCar racing, they're definitely 101 octane fuels. Wow, amazing. Because I've got an old Mercedes, I can drop veg oil straight in there and it runs fine. Don't even bother cracking it. You can buy old olive oil down the road for about half the price of what they're paying for diesel, and she runs fine on it now.
Good. Yeah, well, so to go back to that fuel again, we will be supplying the company that makes the biobutanol with the hemp this next spring when the facility's up and running, and we'll be making maybe the first time in the world hemp biobutanol has ever been made.
Oh, it just sounds like music. I'm just popping down my hemp biofuel petrol station to fill up. I don't really need to fill up, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know, economically will it make any sense, but we'll know scientifically, and we'll have the data, and we'll know just how much energy content, we can get out of it. And my hunch, is that it's going to be much better than corn stover or these things that they're using currently to make the biobutanol.
Yeah. Because there's a fuel you can get from the mushrooms or the algae as well, isn't there? Doesn't algae make some sort of fuel?
Yeah, you can get to, because algae at the end of the day is pretty much where all the oil comes from. It's a lot of lipids, a lot of fats, a lot of oil in there. So you can make a biodiesel. So a lot of my friends that I worked, years ago when I first started studying algae was really focused on that. And there are a lot of companies now that do very, very big business, making fuels from algae. And so, you'll see that that's just going to be one of the larger growing industries moving forward. You're going to see a lot of corporations get into it just because it works. I've seen smokestacks from some of the world's largest, coal-fired power plants, where they divert the smoke stream into algae greenhouses, and then they run that through, the photobioreactors, these plastic tubes, to grow algae, and then that sequesters the CO2, and some of the other pollutants. And so, it's going to be one of our biggest allies in the fight against, climate change and carbon dioxide, taking it out of the atmosphere, along with hemp and along with some of these other things.
Yeah. So this is how did you get involved in all this? What happened?
No, I wish I knew. People ask that all the time, and because I come from the Midwest, and I come from a place where people were not teaching about this. Nobody was talking about it. But I have a father, I guess, probably, who kind of got me into thinking. But he started in real estate development, where he would deconstruct buildings, warehouse those materials and reuse them to build new buildings. So the majority of our buildings that we built, let's say 50% of the materials are reused or old, so that people threw away. They were just tearing buildings down left and right in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in this country, which was sad because it's some of our best architecture. And the stuff they replaced it with, not so good. But anyways, we would go in and salvage a lot of the material that would be, 100 years old, 80 years old, 120 years old, whatever, and reuse that. And he created a good business doing that. And I kind of learned, hey, people's waste right now that we just throw away in our country actually has inherent value, maybe more value than the new stuff we're making, because it's if I look at it and the majority of these new buildings will barely last the life of the mortgage, and I'd prefer to build buildings that'll last 100 years.
Oh, easily. I mean, once you start looking at hempcrete, you're looking at, when geothermodynamic building people, right? And basically, this is what hempcrete is. It's one of these materials. One of the I've been talking to the guys in France about it, and they really made me laugh, because you see, one of the problems with this material, not one of the problems, is it doesn't really start getting hard until you start talking about 2,000 years. So they can't, although they know it works, they can't quite study it, because you've got to wait 2,000 years for it to go off. I mean, it's hard from a couple of weeks. It's usable for us, but it really doesn't really start to set until, and of course, by the time it's set, it's completely changed itself. So they're having quite a difficult time going back in history, finding out what was made from these materials. Roman concrete, for instance, is certainly hemp and volcanic dust mixed together. And now you've been to Italy. Rome is still there, isn't it? They built new Rome around old Rome. Now, if the building material wasn't any good from the days of Rome, it would have all fallen down by now. And it's still there, isn't it? The pioneer is still there in Rome, with traffic driving around it.
Right.
It's
and if you compare that to our infrastructure, Steve, compare that to our infrastructure that's only 50 years old, maybe in this country, in the United States, 50 to 100 years old, everything's crumbling. The concrete that we used back had a lifespan of about 50 years, So we built our skyscrapers, we built our roads, we built our bridges with materials that are falling apart. And the numbers that we've seen in the United States alone, just to keep our infrastructure current, not to take it to the next 21st century level or anything innovative, between $2 to $3 trillion. I mean,
that's just
in this country
figure.
alone. Right. Just to keep our infrastructure in this country current. I mean, that's something most politicians don't like to talk about, because that means we're going to have to raise taxes just to keep our lights on and our roads running, and our wastewater treatments operating, because they haven't made the necessary investments properly, because, for one, the design was faulty to begin with.
And, of course, when you speak of your country, you really are technically quite a new nation in the great scheme of things. So for a new nation to go and build and it to fall down so quickly is certainly not of the Roman Empire, is it? Or some of the more classic empires that have ruled or regulated the earth, like the Egyptians and the Greeks. It's quite phenomenal, isn't it, how the quick build block got in and just built out of crap.
You know what'll last? Our landfills.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're big enough, and they sealed them off, so that way they last longer. But anyways, our buildings, we'll get there. I mean, eventually we're going to have to get there. It's inevitable that we move towards these technologies and sustainability and wake up, because you're not going to rebuild the world with petroleum again. It's just not going to happen. There's not enough resources, not enough burden, there's not enough ecological, flexibility, in the ecosystem to handle another boom like that. So we're going to have to do it smarter this time.
Yeah, And as you say, then hemp and mushrooms and algae and all these other the photovoltaic glass that Germany's building now. Oh man, some of the stuff out there is just absolutely mind-boggling. Not mind-boggling, but I just say I find it so exciting. We can actually start using these materials. Listen, we're coming. I believe, Casper. What have we got? We've got a few minutes left. How long have we got going?
Yeah, let me look here.
Take the dog for a walk, right?
We've got about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes. So is there anything you want to bring up, Brandon? Is there anything you want to talk about now, sort of really about current, projects that you're involved in that you want people to know about?
Well, I could always talk about some of the companies that we work with, Just Biofiber, if you go justbiofiber.com, they make a very unique hempcrete product. We're very excited about that. It's kind of like a Lego block stacking, similar to putting in, bricks or large concrete blocks, cement blocks, and you can put them in a little bit of mortar. But they, to me, these are the kind of technologies that will revolutionize the building industry as well. With 3D printing technologies that are coming out too, that I know that are integrating hemp, it's going to be pretty cool. But these are something that I think you can bring to somewhere like Romania today, where they're throwing a lot of their waste away, and the biomass, and then finding a value added supply that or a product that you could create, and it's something that the markets could readily understand and train the skilled workforce to implement. Comparatively to some of the other hemp products that I've seen in the building industry. And
so what was the website on that one? Give me the website, Dan. I didn't quite catch it.
Justbiofiber.com. JUSTBIOFIBER.com.
I'm going to be on that site like a rash in about as soon as we put the phone down.
Yeah, you'll like that one. You're going to like that one, Steve. They're a company in Alberta.
Yeah, I'm 1 o'clock in the morning here, but I've got to go and look at that before I go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, you might be giving them a call next week. Get them to Romania.
Well, I've got an old castle. The village I live in, they're regenerating an old castle that's about 400 years old. Unfortunately, they're trying to make it out of concrete, and of course, I haven't got any money to buy concrete. So my next project next year is to show them how to make some hempcrete and restore the castle with hempcrete. Simple.
Yeah.
And I know they go for it because it's cheap, and everything here has got to be cheap because there's no money in this country. They've got everything else, but no money.
Same as when we're working in Jamaica, Steve. You gotta work within the constraints people have. You can't go building for the North American market for a place that's not going to be able to afford it. You got to understand the economics and financial mechanisms of the place you're working if you're going to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking for. I spent some time in Jamaica. I'm looking forward to going back there at some point. But again, when I showed the Rasta community how to use hempcrete, when they'd been carrying concrete blocks about, oh my God, the look on their faces was unbelievable that they could actually build from it.
Exactly. Well, Steve, in Jamaica, the ganja industry is probably a lot more prevalent than hemp is, and especially out the gate. But these blocks you're looking at, that when you look at the website, you'll see them. We're pretty much, you can pretty much make them out of the medical waste and the ganja biomass as well.
Yeah. Well, I certainly did. I basically, they called me the professor. I said, I'm no professor. They said, you're the professor of trash. So how'd you work that out? They said, because you've taken all of our trash and made something from it. And I thought, I did actually, didn't I? Because that all I had was the waste, what they were just, it was just going to be thrown away. Yeah. And I got some lime, as you know, Jamaica's made out of lime, and I found a guy that could burn it up for me. Added some spring water to it and made some blocks. Yeah. Right. Then get on with it.
All right. And then the last thing probably, Steve, would probably be, to talk a little bit about the Native American work we're doing. We're very happy and excited about that because we believe, the kind of sustainability approach that we take through zero emissions and the circular economy and this type of thinking and design philosophy is going to, fits very well within what the Native American philosophy was. And hopefully we can use hemp as a tool to regenerate, their ecology and their economy at the same time. And my long-term hope would be that if they could get into, the processing and the value-added job creation on site, you could start to use this as a way to reduce your reliance on casinos and reduce your reliance on some of the negative infrastructure that's creating your jobs today.
For sure. That I had contact with them in the early part of the year. One thing I did pick up on is we're going to have to breed some specialized seeds for some of the native North Americans because of the temperature. So they've got to be very aware of that they can't just go planting any old seed on some of this land. I think we've got to breed up specialist seeds for them because of the temperatures that are involved. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the biggest smoke signal in the world going up in the middle of summer.
Yeah, we agree with you on that. We agree with you. You don't want to we don't just want to go buy a bunch of seed from Canada or from somewhere and start. We do believe you should take a long-term approach to this, and our hope is that with some of the tribes we're working with that again with that seventh generation thinking and philosophy, they'll take a longer-term approach to the life cycle of the plant and to develop the correct genetics to make them successful for their own parameters. Each tribe will be different, of course.
I was lucky enough to work with a lawyer solicitor down in Florida, and I was with him one night when he wrote up a sort of new treaty for them, which was really quite interesting about the new treaty that was going to be presented to the tribes, the indigenous tribes, and how hemp would be helping sustain them. Well, that was quite fun that night. And I know that was presented to them, and they really did pick up on it. So that's something nice. Again, working with all indigenous tribes, I feel really should get a handle on this, because some of the indigenous tribes of the world, like the Aboriginals, the native North American Indians, they've been so downtrodden over the last few centuries. And technically they're all very environmentally friendly people, or they certainly was. So it'd be nice to see them incorporating this back into the societies.
I agree. And I believe when they do, they'll and if you do it, in a very, in an intelligent manner where you create jobs through the process, you'll find that, this is going to be one of the best tools to I don't know if if you want to call it a wealth transfer or a power distribution or whatever, but when you just start to utilize it to grow your own resources, to grow your own building materials, to grow your own food, to grow your own medicine, these type of things. So, you start to give yourself, you empower yourself and your community when you do these type of projects. Yeah,
Bob Marley said, "Rise up." It'll be an uprising, but not in the way that some people think. I think just to watch this grow and to watch these developments take place is going to be so much fun. Brandon, I think that's about it. An hour goes so quick sometimes. It's really. I believe that we might be able to get to do some work together in the very near future. I'm really looking forward to that. You've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for coming on now. Casper, once again, thanks for looking after the motherboard and sorting out the technical side of stuff, because I couldn't do that. Technical and paperwork, don't call me. Even if I'm the last one on the list, do not call me, because you're just wasting your time. But I'm lucky enough to know guys like you that can cope with stuff like that. Time for hemp, as always. Brandon, fantastic.
Great time. Good talking to everybody.
Yeah, marvellous. And there we go. Another show in the bag.
Listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
The nightclub, the speedboat, The mob. Men and women drinking together. The booze cruise. The spread of jazz. The cocktail. What do they all have in common? They're the results, direct and indirect, of Prohibition, the nearly 14-year period from 1920 to 1933 when the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquor was illegal in this country. Why do you love the story so much?
It's the answer to that question. How the hell did that happen?
Daniel Okrent is author of Last Call, The Rise and Fall of Prohibition.
I mean, it's just so improbable. How did this freedom-loving country put into the organic law, into the Constitution, this unbelievable stricture that said that you can't have a glass of beer? It's really hard to believe.
Part of the reason was simply that Americans like to drink a lot.
This country was very, very drunk. In 1830, the average American over 15 years of age drank 7.3 gallons of pure alcohol a year. That's the equivalent of 90/5 of 80-proof liquor, 1.8 bottles per week for every drinker in the country.
Alcoholism is a serious social problem. It was a social problem in the 19th century, which prompted Prohibition. It is today.
Producers Ken Burns and Lynn Novick collaborated on documentaries about jazz and baseball. In their newest film, airing tonight on PBS, they take on Prohibition.
It was clear that millions of Americans had now come to support Prohibition for all sorts of reasons.
Prohibition was billed, they point out, as the one-size-fits-all cure for the ills of American society.
Prohibition was really sold as not just that it would solve the problem of alcoholism, it would solve poverty, it would solve child labor, it would solve prostitution, it would solve crime, it would get rid of slums.
With so many problems to address, it's not surprising that the Dry Coalition was dizzyingly diverse. Suffragettes who originally wanted the vote so they could outlaw demon liquor. Small-town Protestants threatened by the wave of Catholic immigrants and their city saloons. The Ku Klux Klan who exploited the pernicious stereotype of the dangerous black man with a bottle. Even Broadway producers who wanted patrons out of bars and in their theaters. This is sort of the epitome of strange bedfellows.
Yeah, if you can imagine a very large bed that accommodates, some guy wearing a KKK uniform, somebody from the Industrial Workers of the World, Jane Addams and J.J. Schubert of the theater chain, that's a very strange set of bedfellows.
And is it true that the KKK supported women's suffrage?
KKK supported women's suffrage, and the KKK supported it because they knew that women would support Prohibition.
Jeez,
that's the story of Prohibition. It's all G's, who knew? Yeah.
But who could possibly wrangle this crazy quilt coalition?
I think it's clear that the ASL was the most powerful lobbying group. They actually made a constitutional amendment happen.
The ASL, or Anti-Saloon League. What made them so effective?
Look, they said to you, I don't care what you think about whether babies ought to be slaughtered or whether we should start wars. We don't care about any of those things at all. You're with us on our one issue.
It's one issue. So they weren't party affiliated?
They were not party affiliated, and they, in fact, had strong influence, very strong influence in both parties by design. The organization that's most like them today is the NRA. One issue. That's all we care about.
And the League's seat of power? Not New York, not Washington, but Westerville, Ohio.
So in here was the headquarters of the Anti-Saloon League.
Nina Thomas is an archivist at the town's Anti-Saloon League Museum.
As you see right here, there's a poster that says the saloon or the boys and the girls. Just that emotion of, would you rather have a saloon or would you rather have your children?
The League employed 200 people in a state-of-the-art printing operation that generated 40 tons of propaganda a month. The message was clear. Shall the mothers and children be sacrificed to the financial greed of the liquor trade? It's up to you to decide. Even if the facts sometimes weren't.
Do you know one insane person in every 4 owes his insanity to drink?
Pivotal to Prohibition's passage, anti-German sentiment fomented by World War I. Schlitz, Pabst, Anheuser-Busch. All of them German.
They linked the Germans to the brewers. So people had that kind of in the back of their head that this is un-American.
Though the brewers and distillers had vast financial resources, they were inept campaigners. Here's an ad extolling the virtues of beer.
The public relations strategy of the Wets, I mean, some of the ads, a baby with a beer stein.
Yeah, the brewers wanted to separate themselves from the distillers. They maintained that gin and whiskey, that was horrible, poisonous stuff, whereas our beer was healthy. They actually called it liquid bread.
The Dries had the Wets over a barrel, and the 18th Amendment went into effect at midnight on January 17th, 1920.
After Prohibition became law, how soon was it that it became clear that it wasn't going to work?
Well, one could say it didn't work by around 2 a.m. on January 17th. I think that the general feeling was in the first year that it could work and that it was working. But as people found ways to exploit loopholes, as criminality expanded, as the saloons were able to turn themselves into speakeasies and all you need to do was bribe a local cop or judge, these things began to snowball as early as 1921, 1922.
Legitimate enterprises were corrupted and respect for the law corroded. Drugstores allowed to dispense medicinal alcohol became virtual liquor stores. The Walgreens chain went from 20 stores to 525. But the ultimate buzzkill for Prohibition?
Really is the Depression, this incredible crisis that I think, made America kind of take another look and say, wait, what are our priorities? Is this really that important? We're spending all this money to enforce a law that nobody wants?
In the first few years, drinking did decline 70% from pre-Prohibition levels. But the Dries were up against something even more powerful than money.
What you can't successfully legislate against is human appetite. And if people want something, they're going to find a way to get it.
On December 5th, 1933, the 21st Amendment passed, ending Prohibition.
And Prohibition is repealed.
The only time in history an amendment has been repealed. The noble experiment was over.
It was a failure by any measurement, but positive in its failure. We learned from our failures. We learned, let's not try this again.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.